Hi guys, and welcome back to episode 7 of the Seeking Truth podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you guys on the show today and listening to our episode. Today's episode is all about we are the peacekeepers, and I'll break down what I mean by that a little bit more, but really just felt inspired today out of nowhere, really, that this would be the next topic for our podcast together, and hopefully I can help impart some wisdom and help share some knowledge, and hopefully we can really grow into that identity together about what kind of presence we actually carry as Christians and what kind of presence we actually carry as lovers and followers of Christ, and really impart on you guys that there's more to us than what we do, but actually that presence that we carry is so vitally important as well. So before we jump into today's episode, I just wanted to say as well, thank you so much to everyone who's checked out the website recently. In case you didn't know, I mentioned in last week's episode, but in case you didn't know, I published a book last year called This Is Love. It's a Christian poetry book, and the whole book is designed to inspire and motivate us, and every poem is Holy Spirit breathed. Every poem is written about God's love for us, hence the name This Is Love, or written about how to love others or how to have earthly love relationships. And it's something that I worked on for a really long time, that I'm really passionate about. I'm really happy that it's finally out in the world. You know, that project that you always work on the side, and you want it to become more, but you're not sure if it ever will. Well, I'm so happy to see that it's actually come to fruition, that it is now a physical book, and I'd love for you guys to get your hands on a copy. So head on over to emmajanecashpole.com. You can pick up a physical or an ebook on there. I do ship worldwide, also available on iBooks and Kindle, and on Amazon if you want a physical copy from Amazon as well. Check out the website. We've got some fun new products arriving soon, so keep an eye out for that. But let's get into the episode. So, we are the peacekeepers. What does that mean, Emma? What are you talking about when you're saying we are the peacekeepers? Well, let me tell you. I really got this revelation that as followers of Christ, and with Jesus being the Prince of Peace, that our whole presence almost, or what we can inject into situations, is peace. And I deliberately chose not that we're peacemakers, but we're peacekeepers. We're designed to not just make peace, but to keep the peace, to sustain the peace. And I think that can be part of our role in the community, is just by putting ourselves out there and injecting ourselves into the community, we can actually help sustain this level of peace within the community. So that's kind of my interpretation and vision behind this message, is that hopefully it will inspire you to recognize the impact that you can have on people just by being a Christian, just by being yourself. So yeah, let's break that down a little bit more now. So if we look at Matthew chapter 5, verse 23 to 24, it says, "Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift." God does not want us to come to him when there is unresolved conflict with our brother or sister in Christ. He tells us in this verse that we need to go and resolve that conflict with our brother, to make peace with our brother, to make things right with our brother, and then come back to him. He doesn't want us to come to him knowing that there's this heavy weight, this heavy burden on our shoulders. And I think a lot of the time we kind of take a lack of responsibility for our relationships, and we place it in God's hands, but for the purpose of them being able to step back and not actually be accountable for what's happening. I don't think it's wrong to approach God and pray to God and go on your knees before God and say, God, help me with this relationship. Help me with reconciling, with resolving this conflict between us. But I do think it is what this verse is trying to say is, don't go into the house of the Lord and pretend everything is okay and offer him sacrifices and praise for your life knowing that there's an unresolved conflict in your life that's caused by tension between the two of you that you haven't resolved yet. Because God doesn't want that tension in his house. God doesn't want that tension between you two, between you and God. So he wants you to go and resolve that issue and then come back to God and offer your thanks sacrifices, offer the sacrifices, asking him to help you with forgiveness, to help you to resolve this issue after you've already tried to resolve this conflict and worked with your brother or sister in Christ to resolve this conflict. So Jesus is himself called the Prince of Peace. And I think that if we are to align ourselves with Jesus and align ourselves with his way of living and align ourselves with his light, that we are also then called to carry his presence of that peace. And I'm sure you've noticed it. I'm sure you've noticed those people that you meet that they just have this sense or this presence or this aura about them of just calm, tranquil, peaceful. And you know what? You're always really drawn to those people because when you're around them, you just feel safe. You feel stable. You don't feel the turbulence that you get from other people who maybe don't carry that peace and maybe have more anxious kind of energy about them. And, you know, you probably seek out those people who do have that more tranquil atmosphere around them, that do carry that peace, and you have a lot more sense of security and trust in that relationship simply because they carry peace. They could be two exactly the same people, but you're always going to be drawn more to the one who's more tranquil, more peaceful than the one who's more turbulent and causes you to feel a little bit uncertain or a little bit, I don't know where I'm standing today, or are they going to be a little bit more upset today or more happy, and what is the dynamic of our relationship going to be today? And we're all called as followers of Christ and of people who try to reflect him through our lives. We are all able to carry, and we're all called to carry that peaceful presence in our life. And I think a lot of that really comes down to how much are you trusting God? That leads to peace in your life. How much are you allowing him to guide you, your words, your thoughts, your actions? And really, I think just surrendering to him and not worrying about earthly things, not worrying about your circumstances that are going on in your life, not worrying about any of that. And it's out of the topic of what we're talking about today of how to actually obtain peace. But I just want to really hone in that we are called to be peacekeepers, that we're called to be those people in this environment who are bringing that sense of peace and bringing that atmosphere of tranquility that soothes the room, that makes everyone feel relaxed and feel the presence and joy of God. That's who we're called to be. And isn't that so powerful that that's the vision that God has for our lives, that we could do that simply with our presence? And it's not us as a person, but it's the light of God, this lightness, this airiness of God that we're carrying that can impact our environment around us. I heard someone say recently at a preach that I was listening to that the energy you carry actually creates a 3-meter radius around you. So think next time we walk into a room or we're in a small group setting of what energy are we carrying? Am I carrying a nervous energy today? Am I carrying an energy of peace? And all of the people around you are going to be impacted indirectly by that energy that you're carrying. And this is what I mean when I say that we're called to be peacekeepers, is that if we as Christians are interspersing ourselves into the environment, into the community, we're creating all of these little 3-meter radiuses around the community, and the whole community as a whole is going to become more peaceful. Not because each individual is more peaceful, but simply our presence as individuals is going to help the whole community be more peaceful. And it's through that peace that some people will find God. It's through that peace that they're going to wonder, why am I not worried about this so much? Why, when I'm with this person, do I feel so calm and so at ease at everything and not stressing about the world? Why is it that since this church has come into the community, that the whole community spirit has seemed lifted, even though not everyone in the community is going to church? This is the impact and the influence that we can have on our environments around us. But it depends on what presence and what energy we're carrying on a daily basis. And I think we really need to be aware of what energy are we portraying and really being conscious you can't consciously choose to project peace, but I think consciously choosing when our thoughts try to take away that peace, or when life circumstances are trying to take away that peace, and we're really reminding ourselves of who we are, who we're called to be, what we carry, what presence we carry, whose love that we carry within us, and recognizing that those things are bigger than anything that we're going through. If we're talking more about injecting ourselves into situations, when it comes to conflict, we really need to be trying to resolve it quickly rather than letting it fester. We really need to be trying to obtain that resolution between us and the other person before this turns into decay in the relationship, before it causes a hole or a gap in the relationship between us. They actually say that if you go to bed angry or upset, it actually changes the wiring in your brain. And I can definitely say that I feel like, from personal experience, this definitely happens. I notice times that I go to bed angry or upset about something. The next morning, it's not gone. It's still there, and I know that my brain has been thinking about that the whole night. And you have less quality sleep, and you're more mad or whatever it is in the morning. And so, if you're applying that then to relationships, if you have a fight with someone and you're angry, and then you go to bed thinking about that fight, you're just going to wake up in the morning more angry and more upset and more distant from that person. And you really need to aim to resolve that conflict and resolve that fight that same day, before the day ends, before you go to sleep, before you walk away and your brain spends 8 hours trying to process what's happened and argue to itself that it was right in this situation. Because let's be honest, that's what's going to happen. Our brain is going to try and convince ourselves that we were right, or our brain is going to completely flip the other way and go, we were so wrong. I feel so down and so ashamed of what I feel from that. And you're always going to feel indebted to that other person for trying to make it up to them, whatever it is. It's really, really healthy and really important to try and resolve that conflict the day that it happens, not to let it fester, not to hold things inside you. If someone has done something against you and offended you, this is exactly what Matthew 5:23 is talking about. You need to go to that person and you need to resolve that right there. First go and be reconciled to them. Then come and offer your gift at the altar. Don't go praying and worshiping to God knowing that you have an unresolved unforgiveness towards someone that you used to really care about or that you used to be friends with. That needs to be resolved as quickly as possible. Don't let a moment delay, because if we are to be peacekeepers, we need to be keeping the peace. We need to be working hard to maintain that peace, even when it's difficult, even when we don't want to, even when that other person has done something to really offend us. We need to be resolving conflict. And I don't mean that you need to allow everyone back into your life. I believe what I'm saying is forgiveness is key. You really need to be able to forgive each other, and you can't control whether they can forgive you, but you can control whether you forgive them, right? You can't ever obtain peace with someone that you haven't forgiven, okay? So you can leave that door open if they're not going to forgive you. If you forgive them, you will obtain peace from your side. Of course, you'll still feel grieved and sad if they're not forgiving you, but what you can do is you can forgive them. And you can leave that door open that they know that they'll feel safe to be able to come back when and if they forgive you. And having that door open and you knowing in your mind, I've left that door open for them. It's up to them to choose now what they want to do. I'm not going to try and win them over, manipulate. I've simply forgiven them. I've moved on. I've left that door open. If they want to return into my life, they can. And it's up to them now. And that will bring you so much joy if and when they do decide to forgive and come back into your life. And if they don't, you'll still feel a sense of peace knowing that you've made things right with them from your behalf. And God has seen what you've done from your behalf, and that you've really worked to create and maintain that peace in that relationship. And that it's up to them now and God to work through their part of forgiving and resolving that conflict now. It says on this, resolving conflict, in James 1:19, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." How do we resolve conflict? How do we avoid conflict in the first place? Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to be angry. Anger is such a detrimental tool to so many things. I see so many people get angry over things that are very minor, very mediocre problems, and it really affects their their mental space. If you're getting angry over lots of little things in the day, your mood is going to completely shift that whole day, and you're going to think that you've had a really, really bad day. If you are someone who really telling yourself and really setting out and targeting yourself that every time something is happening that is not going well, every time that something is happening that is upsetting or annoying, really, really working on recognizing this is a small problem. God is in control. God's got this. Like, I haven't done anything wrong, or I've made a mistake. That's okay. And really just working through that and putting that thing back into perspective of, at the grand scheme of things, it doesn't make much of a difference. It's an annoying blip on the radar, but I can move past it in an hour's time. It doesn't affect my life anymore. At the end of the day's time, it doesn't affect my life anymore. Putting it back into that perspective of, I know it's upsetting and annoying right now, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't really need to be investing my energy into getting angry over this. And a consequence of that being that I lose my peace, and a consequence of that being that I'm no longer impacting the people around me in the way that God plans for all of us to impact our people around us. Is that really the influence you want it to have on your life? Think about that. For every problem that comes up, do I really want this to influence my life so much that I'm then being able to influence the people around me less? Is that how important this problem is to me? And if the answer is no, we need to learn how to let that go. We need to learn how to recognize and put that problem into perspective to see that this is not as big of a deal as it feels right now. It's not as big of a deal as I want to make it right now. And so when we're taking this into social situations, when someone maybe approaches you, accuses you, says something towards you, instead of being really quick to anger and causing conflict straight away, it's telling us, just slow down, just listen to what they have to say, listen to what they're trying to tell you. And instead of coming back with an emotional response, come back with your perspective and your side of the argument. Again, being respectful that their perception of what's happened is different, being respectful of the fact that they need to say what their side of the story is and say what their perceptions are, and really working together and really communicating, not with the intent of proving that you're right or wrong, but with the intent of resolving this issue so that it doesn't happen again, and that both of you leave this feeling more confident in your ability to work together and through problems. So, for example, if you're at work, one of your coworkers says, hey, I noticed you did this and it's wrong, and immediately you want to go on the defensive. You start to feel that anger bubble up. How dare they accuse me? Don't they know that I had to do this because blah, 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 or whatever it is? Just stop, just slow down, listen to what they're saying, using those communication words of thank you for telling me that. I understand why you're saying that. I understand that you feel upset or frustrated, or that what I did was against the policies, or whatever it is. Explaining your side of the story. I felt I had to do that because of these reasons, or this was an exceptional circumstance because of this, or actually I wasn't aware that was a policy. And just taking the time, and with that, again, that peace presence of, I'm not here to start a fight with you. I appreciate you coming to me with conflict rather than holding onto it and letting it fester. I feel it's important for me to also share my side, but in a way that's being respectful to you and respectful to your experiences as well. And that's how you're going to get conflict resolution. That's how you're going to get conflict resolved in a way that both people are then able to meet in the middle, because it could be that they didn't know what you knew about what led to making that decision. But that's why you need to have a conversation. You can't assume that, they should just trust me. They should know that I made this decision for a good reason. That is out of your control, but what is in your control is how you explain the situation to them of why you did what you did, in a way that they're going to be willing to hear it, not in a way that's cramming it down their throats, yelling it at them and calling them names, but in a way that's being respectful of their concerns and their feedback, but also trying to portray your side of the story, or accepting the feedback. If it is something that you've done wrong, owning up to it. I know it can be really hard. I know it can be really crappy if you feel that it was something that was done in a moment that you had really limited choice over the outcomes. But again, explaining that to them, that you made the best choice out of a tricky situation, that if that was the wrong choice, that now you're more aware of what you can do next time. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. I will try and implement that next time I'm faced with the same situation. Seeking to understand someone, seeking to listen to someone, to understand their side and their perception of what's happened is so very important in conflict resolution. Everyone's experiences of the same situation is very different. Everyone's going to pick up on different details. And if we assume that people have the same perception of the situation as us, we're always going to get into conflict, because otherwise, if we're assuming that people have the same perceptions as us, we also need to assume that people would make the same decisions as us in the same situations, which again is not true. Everyone is different. Everyone will perceive things differently, and everyone will make different decisions. And it's really communicating to them and having open communication between the two of you and seeking to understand their side. That is the really powerful thing in conflict resolution. The final way that we can be peacemakers is that we actually have the power to diffuse situations before they even arise. So we can resolve issues, like I was saying before, by injecting peace into the hearts and minds of those around us. So our lives are living examples to those around us that we won't be shaken by little things. We won't be shaken by small problems that arise in our lives, that we will constantly have this shield of peace on our minds and our hearts, and that people will look at us and look at how we continue to live in this peace despite the conflict and the turmoil that's going on around us. And they'll know that it's because we've chosen to follow a God that is bigger than those things, that our faith is so strong and so firm in our foundations that it can't be shaken when the world throws things at us. And that's how we can really inject peace into situations that we're in, that we can really be that role model for people that we're around, to look at us and look at our lives and look at how we handle situations. And they say, I want that. I want that peace when I'm faced with terrible news at the doctor's. I want that peace when I find out that my car needs $500 in service repairs. I want that peace when I find out that my boyfriend broke his leg and is not able to come spend our anniversary dinner together, and he lives out of town, and all of these things that we are just able to cope with because we have that firm foundation. We have that trust that God is a good God, and even though we're faced with difficult or tricky situations, that the whole picture of our lives is not impacted by this single event, that the whole picture of our lives is not going to be shaken by something that's trying to steal our peace in the moment, because we're there, we're present with God, we're channeling His love, we're channeling His peace, we're channeling His presence. And that's the thing that's getting us through the day. That's the thing we're holding on to when we're faced with difficulties and trials. So I hope that there's something that you can take away from this message and really apply it to our lives. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. I hope today's episode was really helpful in revealing more to you about who you're called to be as a son or daughter in Christ, and who you're called to be out in the community and out in your worlds, in your environments, in your workplaces, in your homes, wherever it may be that God has placed you. You're there for a reason, and you have to believe you're there for a purpose. And one of those purposes is to be a peacekeeper in that environment, is to inject peace into the hearts of those around you. So thank you so much for listening. I love you guys, and I'll see you on next week's episode. Bye.